Hey, welcome. Today we're going to dive into the psychology of attraction. You know, that invisible thing that pulls us toward one person and not another? Well, you might be surprised to hear that the answer has way less to do with what you see and everything to do with what's going on in your brain. Let's get into it. I mean, just think about it for a second. We've all been there, right? You meet someone and maybe they don't check all the conventional boxes for gorgeous, but there's this undeniable spark. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you find yourself completely drawn in. So, what is actually happening there? What's the deal with that magnetic pull? Well, the answer isn't in their bone structure or their hair color. It's deep inside our own minds. Attraction is a really powerful psychological process, and we're about to break down exactly how it works. Okay, let's just cut right to it. For as long as we can remember, we've been told this myth that attraction is all about looks. But the real psychological truth? It's way, way deeper than that. Genuine, lasting attraction, that's forged in the brain. Think of it like this. Looks can be a hook. For sure, they can grab someone's attention initially, but honestly, that's kind of where their job ends. Real attraction only ignites when our brain starts to connect a person with good, warm, positive emotions. And this is how that connection gets built. When someone really truly listens to you, when they create a space where you feel like you can say anything and you won't be judged, and most importantly, when they make you feel emotionally safe, that's when your brain creates this incredibly strong link. It connects that person with comfort, and that feeling of comfort is the soil where real attraction starts to grow. Which brings us to our first major pillar of attraction, and believe me, it is a big one. Confidence. This is probably the single most powerful psychological tool in the entire attraction toolbox. But we need to be super clear about what confidence actually is. It is not about being the loudest person in the room or putting on a show. Nope. True confidence is this quiet strength. It's being genuinely comfortable with who you are and knowing your own value without needing anyone else to tell you what it is. And what's so fascinating is the chain reaction this sets off in our minds. See, when we're around a truly confident person, our brain subconsciously reads that as stability. That feeling of stability then makes us feel safe. And as we just talked about, safety is the foundation for attraction. It's a clear, step-by-step psychological path. Okay, building on that feeling of safety, we get to our second pillar, and this one taps into something every single human needs: emotional validation. We are just hardwired to be drawn to people who make us feel seen, heard, and like we matter. Think about how amazing it feels when someone remembers some tiny detail you told them weeks ago. Or when they don't just brush off your feelings, but they actually take them seriously and try to understand why you feel that way. These things are incredibly attractive because they validate who we are. And there's a real biological reason for this. When we feel that deep sense of connection and understanding, our brain releases this chemical called oxytocin. You might have heard of it as the bonding hormone or the cuddle hormone, and for good reason. It creates this powerful feeling of trust and attachment. This all leads to a feeling that I bet is pretty familiar. You know, you meet someone and you just feel different around them. There's this special comfort, a unique vibe that you can't really explain with words. Well, guess what? That special feeling isn't magic. It's not fate. It's literally psychology at work. It's the result of your brain getting a nice little flood of hormones like oxytocin because that person made you feel safe, understood, and validated. But while our brains crave that safety, there's another, kind of contradictory force in play. Our brains absolutely hate being bored. And this leads us to a more surprising element of attraction: the allure of a little mystery. See, our brains are basically hardwired to look for new and interesting things. Someone who's a completely open book right away can get predictable and, a little less interesting over time. But a person who doesn't tell you their entire life story in the first 5 minutes, someone who keeps a little bit of mystery, that keeps our brain hooked, curious, and wanting to figure them out. Now for our last pillar, we're going to circle back to a place of comfort: the psychology of similarity. Because while a little mystery is exciting, a deep, lasting connection is almost always built on a foundation of shared experiences and familiarity. This is one of the most basic rules in all of social psychology, and it boils down to a very simple truth. We like people who are like us. At our core, we're just drawn to people who seem to mirror our own experiences, our beliefs, and even our struggles. And this goes so much deeper than just liking the same band or the same TV show. When you share the same core values, when you've been through similar struggles, and when you can connect on the level of your basic life experiences, that creates an incredibly powerful bond. It's a nonverbal way of saying, hey, you're not alone, I get it. And this explains something we see all the time in the real world, right? Deep, meaningful attraction is very rarely a lightning bolt moment with a complete stranger. It's much more often a slow burn that develops inside a friendship, where you actually have the time to discover all that common ground and build that solid foundation of similarity. So, let's pull all of this together. If there's just one thing you take away from all this, I hope it's that attraction isn't some random magical force that we have no control over. It's a predictable psychological process that's based on things we can actually understand. In the end, it really isn't about how someone looks. It's about creating positive feelings in their mind. It's about the sense of safety that comes from genuine confidence. It's about the power of making someone feel truly heard. And it's about the deep bond that comes from a meaningful connection. What this all means is that the focus really shouldn't be on how to make someone else attracted to you. The real work is in understanding yourself, building your own emotional strength, and becoming a confident person. When you do that, you'll find that attraction just becomes a natural result of who you are. And that leaves us with one final thing to think about. Instead of always asking who you're attracted to, maybe a better question to ask yourself is this: what is it in other people that makes you feel truly safe, seen, and connected? The answer to that question, well, it reveals everything.